Welcome to another episode of Exploring Different Brains. Today we go all the way to Australia to talk to the best-selling author, Tania Marshall. Her latest book, AspienGirl, Not Your Average Superhero, among other great books, is our guest. Tania, great to have you. How are you?
Hi, and thank you for having me on the show. We're great.
Well, Tania, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name's Tania Marshall, and I'm a psychologist over here in Australia. And I work primarily with high-functioning neurodiverse people, in particular females. And females are widely under-recognized in the world. An area that we're quite concerned about.
Tell our audience here what you feel the big differences are between Aspian women and guys with Asperger's.
Well, we're starting to understand only just recently, as recent as just last year and this year, some of the gender differences. And some of the differences are that girls tend to internalize, whereas boys will externalize in behavior-wise. Girls also, we've found, seem to be more social, whether that's a cultural thing or whether they're just more social in general than boys, but not as social as, say, your typical girls. So they're still struggling. It also seems to be that the higher IQ or the higher the intelligence, the more able the girl is to mask. We use the words masking or compensatory strategies, which is actually an area that I'm really interested in and writing about right now, is how do these girls manage to pass for normal or manage to get through so many years using certain skills without being picked up. So that's a couple of differences there. I am aware that recently there was Yale has just released, is about to release a study on the brain scans and the brain differences between girls and boys. So that's going to be very good for helping us to understand those differences and then start making interventions for girls. But even before we start doing that, we need assessment tools for girls because there are very few assessment tools for girls out there right now and none for female adults.
Do you feel also that there's a component of, for lack of a better term, I'll call it the cultural demands on a female versus a male that allow them to mask it better?
Yeah, I do, for sure. I think that culturally, females are expected, they have certain expectations on them more so than males do. And I think that makes it much more challenging for them to try to fit in. And if they don't feel like they want to look like how society wants a woman to look, that there might be something wrong with them, as they've told me.
Now, tell us the names. You've written so many books and everything, and these bestsellers and everything.
Yeah.
Tell us some of the names of your books for our viewers.
Okay. Well, I wrote, if we go back a little bit, there wasn't a lot of information. And when I was working with these girls, the parents were looking for information or parents who were coming to me with their girls because they just weren't satisfied with the answers they were getting from. It just didn't seem to fit when they'd gone to see other professionals. And so I thought, and I'd been working as a psychologist for many, many years, and I thought, oh, I want to start writing about my work. And so my first book, I Am AspienGirl, was really just about describing what I was seeing in the girls that came into my clinic. And so I was seeing this profile of real abilities and gifts, and then some significant challenges as well. And those sort of traits varied from mild to severe. So, and the core theme that came out of that narrative-wise was a sense of feeling different from their peers. And that, of course, also goes from feeling just a little bit different from their peers all the way to I'm just not from this planet at all. And I've got one person who is, she made it to, she's in my second book, I Am AspienGirl, and she's my mentor, and she made it through the second round of the Mars project. She wanted to go to Mars because she doesn't like it here on Earth. So I think another theme is many of the women and females and girls are not being supported.
Please define what you mean not being supported.
They're not being understood, first of all. They're being misdiagnosed, and they're also being put on medications that aren't based on those diagnoses, that aren't helpful, and that a lot of times are not supportive. And also there isn't the awareness from professionals, so psychologists or psychiatrists have an understanding that Asperger's is how it presents in males. So when a female presents, then she can't have Asperger's if she's making eye contact, or if she's having a superficial conversation, or if she's showing some appropriate body language, because, she's taught herself to do that, and she's copied and mimicked her peers. So she knows how to do that. But if you dig a little deeper, then you can find out that she's got some social skills problems, and she's got some anxiety, and she's really trying hard on a day-to-day basis just to get through the day.
Because of all of your bestsellers and everything you've written about females, our viewers and listeners are going to want to know, what do you think about, in your experience anyhow, the unique gifts that might be more associated with a woman than a male, or are the unique gifts the same? And I know I agree with my daughter Rebecca too. Every brain is different. They're like snowflakes. No two are alike, so we're generalizing here. But do you feel there are unique gifts that have occurred with more frequency in one gender or the other in your experience? Because you've had a tremendous amount of experience.
Thank you. I've seen females sort of with all kinds of gifts. But I do see in one difference is in the caring profession, that I see more females who go into or becoming teachers or nurses, special needs teachers in particular, or social workers. So I tend to see that as a difference. But across genders, I see a lot of performing artists, which is a very big area, from singing to poetry to writing books to being actresses and actors and so on and so forth. So So I would say that in my experience, I tend to see more females in the caring professions. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of females, and there's not a stereotype. There's not a tomboy stereotype. There are different kinds of, I guess, if you wanted to subtype them into groups, in my first book, I Am AspienGirl, I had twins, a set of twins, and one is a tomboy and one is a princess. She's very, very girly. So, and she'd be the least to be picked up or diagnosed. So I think that it's important to understand that there are different types of girls, and the least ones to be picked up would be the princessy supermodel kind of type girls, because they're very superficially social, and they have a high IQ, and they've told me that they've taught themselves and by mimicking and copying and knowing what to do and what to say, and they're quite high achievers. I'm just trying to think. There was one more thing I wanted to point out about girls. Was there, I guess I mentioned that before, the professional knowledge is lacking, but also the assessment tool. So something like the gold standard ADOS has now been shown by research to not be very good at picking up girls, the subtle characteristics. So, for example, they might meet 2 of the modules, but not the 3rd one, or they might just be underneath the cutoff. So it's important for professionals to have training in this area and to understand how to look for the girls and what kinds of questions that you ask that would be differently than for males.
Tania, as you know, women as opposed to men are put in a much more difficult position when it comes to dating. What are some of the rules or advice that you can give our Aspien females who are taking all this in, and also to the people who care for them, caring for other parties, whether they're parents, friends, or whoever? What kind of advice can you give them on dating?
Wow, that's a big area. Because what we do know from just even a recent research study, but I've known this for quite some time, but there's time in between clinical, evidence and research-based evidence, is that females are at a very vulnerable, or due to their social naivety, do get taken advantage of a lot. So when it comes to dating, I think it's really important that they learn about safety skills and what to do if they don't feel comfortable, and when not to be put themselves in a place where they may be unsafe because of their literalness. They may misinterpret other people's intentions, which get them into quite some danger. So I think having a mentor about dating and reading about dating and how to be safe is extremely important. So when I work with teenagers and girls, depending on where they are developmentally, we're often talking about safety and dating and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and how to protect yourself and things like that.
I just want to close on a positive note from Tania Marshall to all of our Aspien women out there.
That would be yourself, find out what your strengths are, find a mentor, and go for it.
I love that. That's great. That's great.
Be your own superhero. That's the Aspien's model, right? Be your own superhero, not someone else.
Be your own superhero, not someone else.
Yeah, because a lot in the biographical accounts of women, and this is my fourth book, is about the narratives and the themes of what come out of all of those I've got hundreds of them, but I know the themes in my head because I've read them all. And one of the themes is they're not being themselves. So when they go unidentified, they start copying and mimicking and pretending to be other people, and then they don't develop their own identity. So some of them go on to develop personality disorders, right? So they have both. But my motto is be yourself, right? And you can be yourself by finding out what your strengths are, not trying to be like other neurotypicals, and having mentors and family members and caretakers support and nurture your strengths and gifts. So finding it, if you don't know what they are, then in my third book, we'll be talking about how to find out what your strengths are, how to nurture them, how can parents help the child or the adolescent or the adult to do that and go in that direction.
Tell our audience about how they can find you and your books and learn more about all of this great work you're doing.
Sure. The book has a website, which is at AspienGirl.com. So you can learn more about the books there. I also have my own personal website, which is mostly about neurodiversity in females and some on males, which is at TaniaMarshall.com. I also blog about female autism and female Asperger's at taniamarshall.wordpress.com. And you could also email me at tania@aspiengirl.com.
Thank you so much, Tania. Keep up the great work you do for so many. You're an inspiration, and we look forward to working with you.
Me too. Thank you.
For more information, visit us at differentbrains.com.